Shalom. This week we will be studying Vayeshev, which is about Joseph and his brothers. And Vayeshev means and he dwelt. And it begins in Genesis 37:1. So let's start off with prayer. If you will join me, please. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kitshanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu al divrei Torah. Blessed are you, Lord our God, everlasting King, who sets us apart by his establishments and established us on words of Torah. So, what does Yeshev mean? Yeshev is the word that is used as to settle. Now, Genesis 37:1 says, Now Jacob was settled in the land where his father had sojourned, the land of Canaan. So it means to dwell, to remain, to sit, or to abide. And it comes from the word like sheva, which is like to sit or rest, seven, or even an oath. So he is finally coming to a place of rest. He's anchoring himself to the land that his fathers Isaac and Abraham dwelt in. So he will now dwell in the chosen land. And the very first thing we read about, right after it says, and now he's going to rest, now he's going to dwell, we hear about Joseph. Joseph ben Zekanim. So the word Zekanim is from Zekan, which is old or old age or an elder. So in verses 3-4 of Genesis 37, it says, Israel loved Joseph more than all his sons because he was a son of his old age, or a son of when he was an elder. He crafted him a fine pasim, a tunic, but it's the word pasim. His brothers saw that their father loved him more than all his brothers, and they hated him and could not speak peaceably to him. So Rashi says, pertaining to that, the son of his old age, because he was a wise son to him. He had been taught in the tents of Shem and Eber, according to Genesis Rabbah 84:8. Another explanation of Zechariah is that his facial features were similar to Jacob's. So it's like his little mini-me. And, it was thrilling for him to see him because he was very learned, but also because he looked so much like him. So we immediately learn of Joseph and about how he tended the flocks with his brothers, and that his brothers hated him because Jacob loved him more than his brothers, and they had no kind words to speak of him. In Matthew 12:34, it says, out of the abundance of the heart, the mouth speaks. In other words, they had no kindness or love in their heart for him. And therefore, they couldn't even speak a word of love or speak a word of kindness to Joseph because they hated him that much. Nothing good could come out of their mouth. So it was only just ugliness and hate and discord. So that Jacob had a coat made for Joseph. And like I said, it's the word pasim, the coat of many colors. It's ketonet pasim, and it means like an embroidered coat, but it's a coat made of embroidered parts. Some texts omit embroidered coat, and the pasim means parts. So the coat was what they say was made of strips. It was actually strips, according to Ibn Ezra. And it was just different colors. So it was just a bunch of different fine materials, and they were all strips, and they combined them all together and made this beautiful coat. So he crafted him a fine tunic, like I said, the ketonet pasim. And Reish Lakish said, in the name of Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah, a person must refrain from treating one of his children differently as due to the fine tunic that Jacob crafted for Joseph, and they hated him. In other words, don't treat your kids differently. Try to treat them all the same, because then what you are doing is stirring up this hate, this animosity between the children. So in order to avoid that, try to treat all your kids differently. That's what he's saying. So the coat, in many instances, denotes authority. And some sages also believed that it was important to note that it was made of strips. Why? Why was it important to show that? Because it said in one of the readings that I looked into, it said Joseph had to be sold to Egypt because God would eventually deliver the Jews from the bondage of Egypt through the, quote, strip made in the water to flee the pursuing Egyptians, just like the strips of Joseph's coat. In other words, we've always seen, in movies or cartoons, that Moses raises his hands and the water parts. Well, what the rabbis are saying pertaining to the strips, it's like the reason the coat had to be made into strips and that Joseph had to go to Egypt was because of the same exact thing, the strips, because God opened up strips in the water. In other words, opened up 12 in the water where each of the tribes could go through on dry land to flee from the Egyptians. So Kuni says the pasim, and I just loved this. I thought this was so neat. Pasim, the coat, that the name was given to the particular garment retroactively. In other words, after Joseph had been sold. And each letter of the word refers to a different master to whom Joseph had been sold, commencing with the Mem for the Midianites and ending with the Pei for Potiphar. So the Pei stands for Potiphar, the Samech stands for the merchants, the Soharim, the Yod stands for the Ishmaelites, and the Mem stands for the Midianites. So the first letter of each of those letters stands for those things, and so it spells Pasim. So that's what Hiskuni says about the Pasim. And I thought that was really amazing because there's several things, and I know I've taught this before, that are taught to us through these acronyms, and they each stand for something else, and there's a reason that they're spelled the way they are spelled. So from the teaching of Rabbi Shimon bar Yochai, it says the suffering of righteous people, because we know that what Joseph endured at the hands of his brothers and being thrown into a pit and being sold and being sold again and then handed over to the Egyptians and then being thrown into prison because of Potiphar's wife. All these things, they're horrible, but the suffering of righteous people also comes from the side of mercy. God allows it and is generated because of his love for those people, because he loves the righteous. He wants to draw them closer to him. In order to do this, he breaks the person physically through illness or other suffering. This strengthens the person spiritually. Instead of the body ruling the spirit, the reverse happens, and the spirit rules the body. From this new heightened spiritual awareness, a person can see the divine properly. All this is because the soul is ruling a weak body. The righteous need a weak body and a strong spirit, further enhanced by overcoming its own weakness, in order to be true lovers of the Holy One, blessed be He. This is what the colleagues mean by saying that the Holy One gives the righteous suffering in this physical world in order to reward them in the spiritual world. And I just thought that was so amazing, because when you consider all of the people in the scriptures and all the suffering that they went through and all the different trials that they go through, it was to increase their closeness to God. And I truly believe that didn't stop with the Bible. I believe it still happens today. And I do believe that as believers, it draws us closer to each other, and it draws us closer to God. It draws us closer to the Word and to His ways when we're going through things. And hopefully, we draw closer to Him before those things happen. But, He loves us so much that sometimes those spankings, come about so that we will, turn wholeheartedly to the Lord and the walk we have with Him. So, according to the scriptures in Genesis 37, 15, and 16, Joseph was wandering in the field. And we've taught before about, especially during Rosh Hashanah and during the time of Elul, we've taught that the Messiah is found in the field. And we even, at one of the teachings I gave, I even put down a song that our family loves a lot. And it basically says, in the field, the king will be. Messiah will be in the field. So in 15 and 16, it says, when he reached Shechem, a man came upon him wandering in the fields. The man asked him, what are you looking for? And he answered, I'm looking for my brothers. Could you tell me where they're pasturing? So Jacob's sheep should have been in the field. Jacob's sheep are basically like people, God's people, in the field looking for God. But they weren't in the field. Where was Jacob's sheep feeding? Is asked of God's agent. And some say that it was an angel. Some say, some just called him an agent. But Joseph, we know, is a picture of the Messiah. Oops, I'm so sorry. Joseph, we know, is a picture of the Messiah in Judaism, to the point that he is even, there's two Messiahs in Judaism. Messiah ben Joseph and Messiah ben David. Messiah ben Joseph is considered the suffering Messiah, whereas Messiah ben David is the king Messiah. So when we think of Yeshua, when Yeshua came, we see him as Messiah ben Joseph. He suffered while he was here. And in that day, the Lord will come, and this time Messiah will be Messiah ben David. That's the king. So Messiah is asking, where are the father's sheep? Where are they feeding? And the word wandering there is to'eh. And it means literally to wander or to go astray, to err, to stagger, to be like intoxicated, but with sin, wandering of the mind. Okay. So in the At Zekanim, the three letters in the word To'eh is where the angel Gabriel gave Joseph a hint of the three exiles of the Jewish people. And, they would endure those exiles. The Tet would be, what am I saying? Tav, excuse me. The Tav would be 400 because of the 400 years of exile in Egypt. The Ayin would be, because of the numerical value of the letter, the Ayin would be the 70 years of exile in Babylon. And the Hey, which equals 5, would be the amount of time till the end of the exile, commonly known as the Roman exile, till the coming of Messiah. So that's why it's very interesting that the word there for wandering is the word to'eh. And they say that it is, that specific word is used as a hint to Joseph. It's like, you know what? These are the 3 times that there will be exiles for the children of Israel. And that's why I think it's so important to know your Hebrew letters and to know their numerical value and their gematria, because we can learn so much from that, as we're reading and as we're looking at the actual Hebrew letters in the scriptures. And you gain so much more than just reading, what the translation is. So basically, the man said, they've gone from here, for I heard them say, let us go to Dothan. So Joseph followed his brothers and found them at Dothan. Now, Dothan is known as a place of 2 wells, but it's actually, if you look at it, it's the Dalet and then the Tav. So it's dot or dot, but it's the word law. Okay. So I highlighted the word there. Okay. Mise, and then I highlighted the word, I didn't highlight the Dalet. I just put Tana. It's Dotana. Okay. So anyway, so the reason I highlighted the Zay, okay, is because the word here, he says, they have gone from here. It's literally, they've gone from this. They've gone literally from this. They've gone from here. They have said that they're no longer interested in being the 12 tribes. In the At Zekanim, the reason they're saying that is that they don't want to be part of the 12 tribes. The numerical value of the letters in the word Zeh is 12, because the Zeh, the Zayin equals 7 and the Hey equals 5. So the 7 plus 5 equals 12. So according to the At Zekanim, okay, knowledge of the elders, basically they're saying, when they said they've gone from here and they're no longer interested in being part of the 12 tribes, because they're using the word Ze here. So I found that to be very interesting, to say they don't want to be part of the 12. So we're going to get rid of Joseph, but more importantly, they're going to Dothan, dot, the law. So when you hear of the word dot, it is specifically the curse of the law, not the pictures that we learn about the Messiah and the kingdom and the festivals, all those things, the kosher laws, not those things, not the pictures that show us those things, but it's the curse of the law. So Rashi here said they left their feelings of brotherhood, according to Rashi. They're going to Dotan to seek the law or legal advice about killing Joseph. That's how much they had lost their love for their brother. They're going to the law to turn away from being part of the 12 tribes, to turn away from the righteousness of the Torah and loving your brother to, we don't want to be part of the 12, and we want to find a legal way to kill Joseph. So, living evil. So in Genesis 37:20, it says, "Come now, let us kill him and throw him into one of the pits." And we can say, a savage beast devoured him. We shall see what comes of his dreams. Well, the words there, savage beast, is very interesting because literally, when you look at the Hebrew, it's haya, and then it's ra'ah, haya, ra'ah, living evil. Now, it can be translated as savage beast, okay, because the appetite for raw or living flesh is what a beast is, or a wild beast. And ra'ah, ra is evil, okay? So, but it can also be savage, all right? So I just thought that was really interesting because it's like, let's just say a living evil devoured him. We're already seeing that the brothers are just turning away from God in their actions. They're turning away by considering how they can kill Joseph. And now they're coming up with, you know what, let's just say a living evil killed him, a savage beast. They're plotting and they're planning. They're all talking about it. It's not just one brother saying it, it's all 12 of them. I mean, all 11 of them. They're talking about these things amongst themselves, and the hate is so great that it's just stirring up all these horrible emotions and thoughts in their heads, right? So now we're saying, see, saving Joseph. But when Reuben heard it, when he heard them saying, let's kill him, he tried to save him from them. Let us not take his life, is what it says in verse 21. Let us not take his life. But the sages question, did he really try to save Joseph? I mean, he was very much, egging on this hate. And instead of saying, because he's the oldest, he didn't want to, some of the sages say he didn't want his brother's hands stained with the blood of Joseph, but he doesn't stop them. And he's the oldest. He has the authority to change that entire situation. And he and his brothers had talked about killing Joseph, but would be happy if an animal like a snake or a scorpion or others, not them, not the brothers, others would kill him. So it's really important because when a person engages in words of hate with others, their hands have already shed blood and are responsible as if they had already committed the act themselves. So in Siftei Hachamim, in Parsha Vayehi, it says, among the blessings with which Yaakov blessed his sons. Now this is talking later on, as he's dying, he blesses all of his sons, right? So it is written that he blessed Judah, and who said, what will we gain if we kill our brother? Come, let us sell him. Yet, why did Yaakov not bless Reuben, who wanted to totally rescue Joseph and bring him back to his father, whereas Judah, suggested to sell him. Perforce, Reuben's intent was not for the sake of heaven, but so people would not put the blame on him, saying, "You're the firstborn. You had the authority. You could have stopped it." So instead of him being the oldest, being the elder, being the one with more understanding or more knowledge, could have put an end to it, but he didn't. He just said, you know what? I'll take him to dad later. But that wasn't his heart. It was truly that he just didn't want his hands dirty. He didn't want his brother's hands dirty. The attitude that some of the sages say was that prevailed was the fact that it was like, let somebody else kill him. Let's just not dirty our hands. Let somebody else kill him. So when Judah said to his brothers, "What profit is it if we kill our brother and conceal his blood?" So that's why he was honored with being a king later, and the tribe would have the king in his lineage, because he knew it's wrong to kill. Let's sell him. Let's sell him. There's no profit in killing him. We can't do that. So that's why they say that the blessing, went to Judah in that fashion. So in Agadat Bereshit 76:3, it says, "These are the tribes who sought to nullify something from the Torah. Once he left, they said to each other, 'Come, let us kill him.' The Holy One, blessed be he, said to them, 'You seek to abolish something from the Torah,' and said, 'Let us be killed for it. Let us see who will uphold his words.' The brothers threw Joseph into a cistern and then sold him." And it's important to note that they threw him into the cistern, and it's like, well, there's snakes and there's scorpions down in there, and they could easily have killed him or hurt him. So we look at Joseph, like I said, as Messiah ben Joseph, right? We learn about the suffering Messiah through Joseph's life, because he's a picture, like I said, of the suffering Messiah. As such, his brothers reject him and cast him into a waterless pit with scorpions and snakes. He's then sold as a slave to the Ishmaelites, Midianites, and then the Egyptians. The waterless place is a place without Torah, without the word, because we've learned from the scriptures that water is a picture of the word of God. And the scorpions are a picture of self-righteousness. The tail that stings, okay, the way it's just kind of hanging back there, and then it just stings you and kind of comes out of nowhere. And I'll explain it a little more in the next slide. But it is a picture of self-righteousness. And then snakes are a picture of deception and lies. And I'll explain that also. So the word for scorpion is akrabim. And in Strong's 61:37, it's a scourge or knotted or barbed whip. It's an oppressive rule. And I've got some scriptures for you to look at. He led you through the great and terrible wilderness with its fiery serpents and scorpions and thirsty ground where there was no water. He brought water for you out of the rock of flint. So the Lord's, taking them through these horrible places where there's, all these serpents and scorpions. And then 1 Kings 12:11 says, "Whereas my father loaded you with a heavy yoke, I will add to your yoke. My father disciplined you with whips, but I will discipline you with scorpions. So it's like, God, it's horrible. It's evil. And then Ezekiel 2:6, and you, son of man, neither fear them nor fear their words. Through thistles and thorns are with you. Though thistles and thorns are with you, and you sit on scorpions, neither fear their words nor be dismayed at their presence, for they are a rebellious house. The words that come forth, is just it causes fear when somebody is being self-righteous. You're being judged, and it puts this fear in you. It makes you feel horrible, and that's exactly what what is being described here. And, here in this pit, they were hopeful that there was scorpions and snakes that would possibly harm Joseph. And then the word for serpents is Nachashim, from Nachashim. Exodus 23:1, in the Mechilta de Rabbi Yishmael, it says, do not bear a false report. This is an exhortation against receiving slander. In Strong's 5175, when it's defining the word Nachashim, it says charmers, crafty, and oppressor. So in Numbers 21:6-7, it says, then the Lord sent venomous snakes among you. They bit the people, and many Israelites died. The people came to Moses and said, we sinned when we spoke against the Lord and against you. So there's the slander. And then Psalm 58:3-5, in your minds you devise wrongdoing in the land. With your hands you deal out lawlessness. The wicked are defiant from birth. The liars go astray from the womb. Their venom is like that of a snake, a deaf viper that stops its ears. And then Psalm 140:3, they sharpen their tongues like serpents. Spiders' poison is on their lips. So, it has to do with liars and slander. In Midrash Tehillim 120:2, it says, I know this is long, but I think it's really important. Save my soul from the tongue of falsehood. The people of Israel said before the Almighty, just as you saved us from everything, please save me from this, and we will no longer have any trouble, for the tongue of falsehood is the trouble. This is why it is said, save my soul. All of a person's limbs, some sit and some stand, some move his hands, and some lift and carry. However, the tongue does not sit or stand, but is idle and silent. Yet it can harm both the great and the small, the near and the far. If it were a limb, it would be like any other limb, walking on one foot and another. What do you gain and what do you add? It is a sinner and not a benefit. The Almighty said to the thieving tongue, you steal to eat, even though it is written, you shall not steal. Exodus 20:15. He steals only for a moment, as it says in Proverbs 6:30. Men do not despise a thief if he steals to satisfy his appetite, but you, the tongue, have lifted nothing for your soul, and you have killed. I will do to you what you did to the world from the beginning, slandering people like the serpent. The evil tongue is compared to the coals of broom trees. As it is said, half a hero who is skilled with the bow. Similarly, this wicked person kills people with his tongue. Just as the arrow does not know its target until it reaches it, so too the evil tongue does not know its target until suddenly its words come out to kill or prohibit. So the brothers' lies throughout this story show us how they were killing Joseph long before they sold him. They were killing him with their tongue. And those of you that are familiar with the New Testament and in James, I think it's chapter 3, where it talks about the tongue being so powerful. I really believe it must have been this that was being quoted, this Midrash Tehillim, because it's to me, it goes along perfectly with that scripture. So, like I said, the brothers were killing Joseph with all of their ugly words to the point that they couldn't even have a nice word to say about him. Jacob went into mourning for his son Joseph when the brothers came back with the garment that was stained in the blood of a goat. And he believes it's his son is dead when he sees the blood on the coat that he had given him, the coat of many colors, the pasim. And the sons didn't even bother to tell him the truth. Oh, we found this with blood, but we don't know. Maybe he's still alive. They don't say anything like that. They allow Jacob to believe that Joseph is dead. And there again, that deception, carries on, and they're deceiving their father. And it just makes me think, it's like Jacob had changed. Jacob started out as a deceiver, and he deceived in more than one way, and it keeps coming back. It keeps coming back to him. When he's with Laban, he ends up marrying Leah, even though he had worked for Rachel, and Laban deceived him. So it's like the very characteristic of what he had been, he has to deal with again. And then now, it's happening again, that, the deception is once again happening. And, it just like Jacob just can't seem to get away from having to deal with that, having to look at it. And I always think of that scripture where David says, my sin is ever before me. It's like, it's always in your face. And the reason that is always in our face is God just always wants us to be grateful, to show gratitude for what he's taken us from. He's brought us from our sin to a new life, and he wants us to walk in that new life. But that doesn't mean that, I know a lot of people believe that you should forget your sin. You don't forget your sin. You talk about it so that you own it and the enemy cannot use it against you. And, it's like, it's so important. I see this with Jacob and the need to talk about that sin so that it can't be used against him. The brothers had this self-righteousness, and it was like a sting that they felt justified in their actions against their brother Joseph. They justified it by saying, oh, you know what, we should kill him because he's my dad's favorite. It was wrong, but they felt justified and they were self-righteous about it. We are doing the right thing because, he was dad's favorite, and it's not right. So I think that in this Torah portion, it's so important to see, how much it is showing us about, this, like I said, this self-righteousness, but also the need to talk about our sin so that we deal with it properly and so that it's not brought up to us again. But at the same time, Gamzu letova, this too is for good. It was good that Joseph went to Egypt because it was through Joseph that, the children of Israel were able to go there and be fed by Joseph. During the times of famine, he was able to feed his brothers and reconcile that relationship, and they could mourn for how horrible they had previously been with their brother. So I hope this is a good start for you to study this week in this Torah portion. And we will see you on Shabbat. If not, we'll see you next week. Have a good rest of the week. Shalom.